Hi, I'm David A. Robertson. I'm the author of When We Were Alone. Residential school history is a difficult subject to teach kids, but it's something that all Canadians should know. So how do we do it?
I wanted to know how an early years teacher uses a book like When We Were Alone in the classroom. So I sat down to chat with Pamela Dirksen, a grade 1 teacher at the Winnipeg Mennonite Elementary Middle School.
A lot of teachers, I think, might feel like it's a difficult subject to bring into the classroom. And you've used it in the classroom, so how have you found it with your kids?
It's one of the ways that we can talk about a sensitive subject in a way that they can connect with in a very real way. I think it's the situations in the stories are just so at their level, and they can just empathize with the characters in the book and understand what it's like having somebody choose their clothes and what they wear and how they wear their hair, and it's just something that they can identify with. And there aren't a lot of resources for this age group, so I know when this book came out, it was just really good to have this tool to introduce residential schools to even this level.
What kind of questions do you get from the kids?
Very personal questions, as in, did they get to bring their stuffies? Did they get to bring their own bedding? Did they get to call their mom and dad? Did they get to text their mom and dad? And they can't imagine being separated from their families. And it's somewhere that you can begin a conversation, and you don't have to tell the whole story right now at this age, but even the exposure that this actually happened, and that you can talk about it with your kids and talk about it as a class, and then as they go through school and the topic gets revisited, you can add the layers onto it as they are mature enough to understand it. And we are setting the basis, and a lot of the things we do, a lot of repetition and a lot of foundational work, because I know, like, they need to have solid math facts, they need to have solid reading and writing skills, because all of those skills will be built on in the future grades. And I think it's the same thing with Canadian history as well, that we need to have those basic building blocks so that in the future they can build it onto something that they already know.
What do you think the value of teaching these histories in this younger grades are? What role does a book play in that?
I think a book is easiest to identify with because children are familiar with having stories being read to them, and I think that it's a good conversation starter. And I think it really promotes empathy to people in different situations.
They can empathize with, what would it be like to wear your hair like everybody else? What would it be like to have to wear a uniform? What would it be like to be away from family? What would it be like for you to have to learn in a different language? They can empathize with that. It's a way that you can bring the subject up with them without getting into some of the really difficult things that happened in the history of the school system.
How do I answer the hard questions? About how, what happened to the children, when they didn't listen, or would they run away? It's hard to know how deep to go.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think how can we answer the questions that really could lead to really difficult responses that a kid that age shouldn't probably hear? I've seen the same question that's, Mr. Robertson, what would happen if the kids didn't listen? And I would say, okay, let's talk about that. What happens with you if you don't listen at home? Or what happens at school when you don't listen? And then they'll tell me some of the, I'll get a consequence, or I'll get a timeout, and I would just say, okay, well, in a lot of circumstances, when the kids didn't listen, they would get a consequence as well. That's it.
And often they're satisfied that because they can, in their own head, relate it to their own experience. Right. Oh, well, I have a consequence. It might be a timeout, and they can,
and they're okay with that.
Yeah.
Teaching Indigenous knowledge and perspective is now included in the new Canadian curriculum guide that teachers are using in the classroom. And the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action included integrating residential school history as early as kindergarten. Teachers and parents can access a learning guide to accompany the book. The learning guide provides strategies, discussion points, and follow-up activities to enrich the experience. It's available for free on Highwater Press's website. When We Were Alone starts an important conversation with our children about residential schools and their legacy. Let's make sure that we as teachers, parents, and community keep the conversation going. That is reconciliation in action.